It's October 2018, and we're at Christie's auction house in New York. A portrait hangs on the wall, a blurred image of a man in a dark coat, looking a bit like he stepped out of the 18th century. Nothing unusual for Christie's, except for one thing. This portrait wasn't painted by a human. It was generated by artificial intelligence. The work was called Edmond de Bellamy, and where most paintings carry the signature of an artist, this one was signed with a line of computer code. When the bidding started, nobody expected it to generate all that much interest. Christie's had estimated maybe $7,000 to $10,000, but within minutes, the price skyrocketed. It finally sold for a staggering $432,000. A machine-made portrait had just sold for more than 40 times its estimate. The sale sent shockwaves through the art world. Collectors, critics, and artists all wrestled with the same uncomfortable question. Who gets credit for creativity when a machine makes the art? The programmers who wrote the algorithm? The team who decided which images to feed it? The buyer who saw value in it? Or could we say the machine itself was the artist? This wasn't just about a blurry portrait in a gold frame. It was the moment AI announced itself as a creator, and it forced us all to confront a bigger question. What happens when creativity is no longer uniquely human? And that's the topic of today's podcast, where we are joined by Dr. Maya Ackerman, who is the author of a new book titled Creative Machines, AI, Art and Us. And if you're wondering where the amazing Paddy is today, well, he's putting his feet up and grabbing a cup of tea before the episode kicks off. Yes, I'm also an AI, so thank you for joining us today for this insightful conversation.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Danda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, being an effective product thinker still requires that human touch. Join me in a mission to champion human skills to help product teams boost creativity, enhance collaboration, and communicate with clarity. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Dear friend, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Today I have Dr. Maya Ackerman. She is a pioneer in generative AI and CEO of Wave AI, where she has empowered millions of artists with tools like Lyric Studio and Melody Studio. An associate professor at Santa Clara University with over 50 publications. She has been featured by NBC News, NPR, and Forbes, and has spoken at leading venues including Oxford, Stanford, Google, and the United Nations. In addition to all of her work on AI, she is also a singer, pianist, and songwriter. Oh my God. Wow, Maya. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. And that is a really cut down version of your bio. The full version, I could probably go on for about 10 minutes because you've got so many accolades. And I feel very blessed to be able to speak to you today because, in a way, I use this podcast for my own learning. Not many people know that. They think I do it because I want to create content for other people. I'm very selfish that way. And this is my opportunity to pick the brains of really clever people and learn for myself. So, yeah, there we go.
Thank you so much. Super excited for the conversation.
Awesome. And you're in a cool place. Tell us where you're from.
I am in Los Gatos, California. So it's a beautiful hilly part of California, not too far from San Francisco.
Oh, that's where it all happens, isn't it? Silicon Valley and all of that good stuff.
It really
Yeah.
makes a difference that that energy of the place you're at has an impact from my experience, having lived all over the world.
Nice. And what superpower are you bringing to this particular episode?
You know, there is one thing that I still don't completely understand how that happened to me. When in 2015, I have decided to switch research fields to generative AI. 2015. It was not only not popular, it was so unpopular that my department chair was really quite upset with me because that's not what I was hired for. Um, and so Yeah, it's been a very surreal experience since the end of 2022 when it all blew up and became the most popular thing in the world.
Oh my God. So we're going to be focusing in on AI. I'm guessing that's the thing that we're going to be talking about today, and your awesome book called Creative Machines, AI, Art, and Us.
Yes, precisely.
I'm loving the cover, by the way. I just was commenting off air and said, I love your website and love the design behind it
Thank
as
you.
well. Done by a true creative. So I guess, Maya, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey. Like, you seem like you've got a very creative background. You've ended up in this space of AI. How did you get here? What did you do wrong?
Where do I even start? I was a pianist as a kid. I learned how to play Bach and Vivaldi and the greats in 3 years as a child. And then my family moved to North America and I lost my piano at 12. And
Hang
for
on,
a
how
long
do you
time,
lose your piano? Like, it just,
well, they wouldn't, it was too expensive
okay.
to pay for it, to ship it overseas. And my parents simply could not afford an instrument. So I sort of lost music out of my life, and I think I was grieving too hard to take any other instrument serious. I don't know, it just sort of wouldn't stick. So somehow one thing led to another, and I ended up going to computer science. I kind of fell in love with the logic and predictability of computer programming, and only brought music back into my life when I started taking lessons from an opera singer while doing my PhD in computer science. And then in 2015, I was very lucky, completely by accident, to see Harold Cohen on stage presenting his system called Aaron, which was really one of the earliest image models, AI image models. And there's this beautiful art flashes on the screen. And suddenly I understand that it's AI made. And I'm like, whoa, 2015, who heard of such things? And then on stage, Harold begins to yell, like, I mean, yell, that there are people who are calling his machine creative, but he's the only voice of reason, being clear that he's the creative one. And I'm sitting there mesmerized. And I think that was the moment that I decided to study this field.
I'm just trying to think what I was doing in 2015. That feels like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? So much has happened. What was your next step after being inspired by that talk? Like, did you start reading books? Because you couldn't exactly go on the internet and just start playing around with these language models because they probably weren't available, right? So, how did you build that interest?
Well, so I actually never got to speak with Harold Cohen because people just gathered around him. But I got to speak with Mike Riddell and Dr. Wiggins, who were the other two speakers in the same session, who also did like amazing stuff around automating storytelling and generative music. And I followed them around for an hour to learn as much as I could about it. And they invited me to the International Conference on Computational Creativity. Anyways, I'm a first year professor. I started relearning from scratch. Okay, I just finished all my education, did my two postdocs, started as a faculty, and I'm completely relearning everything. From step zero, I knew nothing about generative AI, like most people at the time, even researchers. Teeny tiny research community out of Europe. And then in 2017, opened one of the earliest generative AI startups.
So, you tried your hand at entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that was a journey. Academia and entrepreneurship are really very different. It's a different value system, it's different priorities. You almost have to be a different version of yourself. That was its own new PhD, I guess. But I think it was really, really important. Not only because we've served millions of people and kind of helped create number one hits and help people express themselves, which is really the core reason to do a business is to help people. But also kind of in my own understanding of what this is all about. In the towers of academia, you can tell yourself, my new approach is amazing. It's going to change the world and you'll never know. And so you can be right forever. Business tests your ideas. Do people actually like it? Right? And users are the smartest people. But users say, especially kind of collectively, is the truth. So I learned a lot.
So I'm writing a book. I think I mentioned it just before we kicked off. And the topic is product discovery. It's how do we come up with ideas that people are going to like, right? And it's very much that premise that you've got to test your ideas and all that good stuff. So I'm selfishly again going to be asking you some questions that are going to help me with the book. So like, how do you test your ideas? Because I think a lot of us are what I call sofapreneurs. We're great at sitting on the sofa and throwing ideas out there, right? But we never have the guts to go through with it.
That's making it to your book, right? This is so good. Wow. Yeah, I think the guts to actually test an idea is enormous, right? It takes the courage, the possibility of failure, right, is real, but also just the enormous amount of time and energy, and you got to extract some level of funding from somewhere. There's so many barriers to entry. And the truth is that, and that's something I've really had to grapple with in my own life. A lot of what's really popular is popular because, or at least it gets a chance because investors want it to. Okay. So let me kind of tell you a story to illustrate that. So we all think that Gen AI blew up with ChatGPT. That's not true. Several months before, there was another company called Stability AI that managed to raise an incredible $101 million before the rise of ChatGPT. In some part, riding the wave of this kind of like impending revolution. Nevertheless, that's when investors woke up. And so they were becoming singularly focused on generative AI investments before ChatGPT. And as GPT was coming out, they were making these just insane investments, the kind of investments that let you subsidize users, the kind of investments that make amazing products free and allow for companies to have massive marketing budgets. That's what investors do in our world. They decide what gets a spotlight before consumers get a say. Right? So consumers are still important, right? You still have products that investors believed in that consumers were like, ultimately, no, thank you, right? But there's a lot of stuff, a lot of amazing stuff that never gets a chance.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I never thought about it that way. The fact that investors shine that spotlight, almost a spark, to then enable the idea to fly and be put in front of the consumer. That's a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, exactly. Because like there's just so many products. There are so many products. We just never try the great majority of them. 99% of them probably never really get enough of an audience to have a chance.
So the book, Creative Machines, AI, Art, and Us. Tell me more about that. Like, what prompted you to write it? What's it about, first of all, and who is it aimed at?
You know, I get invited to give talks a lot, and then I have an hour to tell people what I think. And it's a real privilege. And I think I can get people excited and I can have an idea or two stick after a talk. But I can't convey what I believe about AI in an hour. I can't. Even if I could, it just not enough time to absorb it, to really internalize it, to reflect on it. And so when Wiley reached out less than a year and a half ago now, you know, I was really moved by the idea of writing a book. It was at the worst possible time in some sense. It was a great time in terms of kind of where the world was at, but it was a terrible time from a personal standpoint. My mother was dying from horrible cancer, so my whole family was in terrible upheaval. And so it took everything I had to sort of pull myself together in a few months and start writing. Very, very difficult journey. You know, writing a book is, I've done so much stuff in my life, but writing a book, it's really its own mountain to climb. And so it shares my insider view into where this all came from. What is really happening? What role did academia play? What role did industry actually play? It kind of makes it look like they did everything. They did not do everything, not even close. And then what do they mean for us? What do we do with it? How do we move forward in a way that's actually going to make the world a better place? And I very much have my own take on all of that, that I hope will help broaden the conversation. It desperately needs to be broadened.
What's the central theme? Is it creativity? Is it music? Is it all of that stuff?
So I really talk about all of generative AI, but through a lens on creativity. That's sort of the main focus in some sense. Because to me, all of these machines are creative machines, but some of them lean into creativity more than others. So we start with, what is creativity? Are these machines really creative? Right? As humans, it's so unsettling. Something creative on this world that's not us? Right? So there's kind of a little bit of this. Let's remove the blinders. Let's be honest with ourselves about what's going on here. So I spent a lot of time on this. But then, okay, fine. Let's assume that we got creative machines. Now what? What do we do? And one of the main ideas in the book is a concept that I've developed really through running a company on generative AI for 8 years, and it's called humble creative machines. So you can have a friend who is really, really smart. You're a really, really smart person, so I'm sure you have really, really smart friends in various domains. Yeah, you. So, one of your really, really smart friends, let's say he always wants center stage. You ask him for help and he shoves you aside and he's like, all right, I got this. And he just does everything. And it's all about him. We've all met people like that. They're
Yep.
not that rare. But then somebody can be equally or even smarter, right? And just choose to apply that intellect to elevate you, to help you, so that maybe next time you don't need them as much. And they're okay with that. They're okay with sort of sharing that brilliance. So the way that AI entered the world, initially in academia like this, and it shifted over times, and definitely when it entered kind of the world at large, it entered as this kind of like arrogant thing. Look at me. I got this. Move out of the way. Okay, you can write one little prompt and then go away. I got this, And you couldn't even like modify your prompt afterwards. It's just like one shot deal, one after another. And people feel it. People feel when they're treated like that by human or by machine, right? And what we need to move more towards, and some systems have been doing it, but too slowly and not enough, is a move towards machines that act like the humble sage.
Be more humble. Because at the moment, ChatGPT is very polite. Like, I got to say that. It always tells me I'm right, which is great. It always says, great idea. Even though I've said, I think this is a bad idea. Like, what do you think? Oh, great idea that you've asked me for commenting on your, like, it will always start with a positive. And it will always be very polite. So when we say humble, is it the way that it phrases things, or explain that a little bit more for me?
Sure. ChatGPT actually is a humble creative machine, or at least it can be used as such, which I believe is the reason that it's successful. So before ChatGPT, we had models like GPT-2, GPT-3. You could give them a line of text and they would expand that text. Wonderful. Not very useful, for most of us, right? For most people. You could build cool things with it, but direct interaction with it was just so limited. And really the big epiphany with ChatGPT wasn't just making a smarter brain, is making it able to interact with us. You can clarify your intent with ChatGPT. You can go back and forth. I love ChatGPT. I love that system. There's a lot of use cases that are not humble. Somebody can come in to ChatGPT with the attitude that ChatGPT is just smarter than them, and just take whatever ChatGPT gives and not analyze it critically, and then you can run into a lot of problems. But it's definitely configured in a way that it can be used as a humble creative machines fairly easily. What's amazing to me, what is stunning to me, is that with the epic, unprecedented success of ChatGPT, other people, other than just simply other LLMs that are directly copying it, there hasn't been enough learning from it. If you look at text to image models, text to video, virtually any other use case, we're still in this prompt in, output out, done. You can restart from scratch if you want. You can't go back and forth. You can't clarify your intent. You can't upload a draft very easily. You're very, very limited in how you can interact with these systems. And to be fair, ChatGPT as well, its image capabilities are very limited. Like, they're trying to make it so you can kind of interact with it, but it doesn't work all that well, right? We all know that. So it's not just about having a genius in a bottle. It's about having a genius that interacts with us meaningfully.
Look, I would say in my circle of friends that I tell them I'm terrible at maths. I'm terrible at those sort of subjects, but creativity is kind of my thing. People normally phone me up and go, "Hey, buddy, I'm about to run this workshop. Can you give me a creative icebreaker or energizer?" So I feel like creativity is my thing. That's the thing that I love. So if someone like me sat at home right now going, "These machines, how can they ever be creative? I'm creative. I'm the human in the loop. I'm the one who's coming up with the ideas." What would you say to someone like that? Convince me that AI is going to now take my creativity to the next level.
So there's so much to unpack in there. There is this fundamental resistance to the idea that AI can be creative. And we're seeing that resistance in music and in visual art. And here you're talking about a kind of broader ideation that's really powerful. And we don't want to believe it. We want to say that creativity is what makes us special, what makes us different from machines. And it did for a long time, right? Machines used to just follow orders. And then even when we had the previous wave of machine learning, it would like recommend movies and music to us. Okay, fine, whatever. Like our creativity wasn't threatened. That's what I mean. But then there is Suno and Udio creating incredible music. And there's Midjourney making amazing art. And we need to snap out of it. We need to snap out of it. We need to stop the delusion that we are the only creative beings here. No, they're not touching every domain. Honestly, I think your form of creativity is safe for some time because that hasn't really been the focus, right? LLMs are that is not their creative strength. In fact, they're not even designed to be creative. LLMs are designed to replace search engines, which is the opposite of being creative, and I can explain why if you want. Um, so I think that that's not a target. The type of creativity you're describing is not a target of AI at the moment, at least at a large commercial scale. But fundamentally, the faster we get comfortable with the fact that machines are already creative, the more we can focus on what to do about it. Right? Denial is the first step of grief. We need to start moving forward and making better decisions, pushing towards humble creative machines, figuring out how we can use existing tools through that lens so we can shape the kind of world that we actually want to be a part of.
What is creativity then? Because I think a lot of us have different interpretations of what it is. In your view, what would you say it is?
Novelty plus value. That's a definition that we've been using in academia for a long time, and it's really quite good. So of course, novelty, it has to be original, otherwise you're just copying. But that's not enough. Originality is not enough. There's so much you can come up with, so much original nonsense. We know that. That's easy. So value is pretty ambiguous, right? It could be aesthetic value if it's art. Probably should taste good if it's a recipe. All right. What's value in a book, right? It needs to provide value to its readers. Um, but that's the bottom line. And if any sort of process, if any sort of entity can reliably produce creative artifacts, then we need to admit that it's creative, because I think otherwise we're just fooling ourselves. So even like evolution is a creative process, right? It doesn't need to be conscious. Given what evolution produced over and over again, the incredible stuff that this process led to, I believe it's a healthy perspective to recognize that it's creative.
Yeah, and you mentioned a few use cases there. Like, I think a lot of the listeners and myself included, we've dabbled with image generation and maybe played with technologies like Midjourney or equivalent for image generation. But you mentioned some music stuff there. And for people who haven't come across that side of creativity, like what's going on there with AI? Because I've seen a couple of people talk about it. I had one lady who did a whole keynote on it at a conference, and it kind of blew my mind. So, for anyone out there who hasn't delved into that side of things, like what's happening with the music side?
Ooh, yeah, that one's close to home, right? Because that's my company's in music. we could do an analogous to LLMs, right? So if we look at LLMs, that's really the internet come to life. There was this amazing accomplishment in the age of information. We have the internet. Remember how big that was? Oh my God. And then the internet came to life. That's our current era, right? It's now a brain. They fed all of the data into internet, into an LLM, and we got these amazing emergent properties. So on the music side, what happened was they took YouTube, all the music on it, and that became a musician. So it's really mind blowing. And from a technological standpoint, Suno did a phenomenal job. It's so good. It's so good. I'm not saying it covers all of musical creativity. No, no, no. But they've come really, really far. It's a large music model. It's a model. It's prompt to music. They're starting to make it more interactive. I'm super, super happy about that. Because just music, like anywhere else, you need humble creative machines, right? You don't want. I mean, we don't want a machine to replace all of our musicians. No, like why would we want to go in that direction? But if that musical genius can be tilted to help musicians, who are often the best users of these platforms, anyways, whew, wow, the kind of music we're going to get from combining humans and AI, if they make that combination, if they enable that interaction. So yeah, I mean, check it out. It's beautiful stuff. And if you want to write lyrics, there's Lyric Studio.
Oh, there we go. And what was the first one you mentioned there? The LLM for music. What was that called again?
Suno. So Suno and Udio are kind of the most well-funded, the people who kind of had the resources to build these large music models.
And if somebody at home wanted to have a play, is there like a chat GPT equivalent of it that they can go on and
That's what it
start?
is. You just go
Yeah.
online and you play with it. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And what kind of stuff could you do on there?
Just you literally
I,
like any kind of prompt, like I want a song about how annoying it is to pack all my stuff, but how excited I am to move to San Francisco, and I want it to be a rap song, let's say. Yeah, something like that. That's a fairly common Suno prompt.
and then it builds the whole track, and there's
It does it,
singing and everything.
singing and everything. That's a real thing that exists right now. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my god. And the lady that I saw doing a keynote, her name's LJ, and she's a BBC reporter, a journalist, sorry, and she was really shining the light on the lack of diversity with some of these models. So she was saying it's great at doing kind of the mainstream music, but because they hadn't fed it enough diverse music. This was a couple of years ago, by the way, and she was giving examples. So I'm from the northwest of India. I'm Punjabi, and we have Bhangra music is the kind of genre that I particularly enjoy. And so she did an experiment, and she got these language models to create some Bhangra music, and it was just a bit terrible back then. But the reasoning she gave was because they hadn't diversified enough at that time.
Mhm.
I don't know if things have changed now, but AI, that's one of the, I guess, risks, isn't it? That when we create these amazing things, the people behind it need to have that diverse thinking. Otherwise, it could be just like narrowly focused.
I love that you're bringing this up. AI could expand our horizons. In fact, before this whole Gen AI era in academia, we had a system called IMS, which came up with new classical music styles. I mean, we were already coming up with new genres. It's not an inherent limitation of AI, it's the commercial interest is to just copy what's most popular. And so it makes it look to us like all it can do is just the most dominant stuff. ChatGPT, if you give it a piece of original writing, and I'm sure you've had that experience, it sort of shifts it towards the mean. It like neutralizes what you wrote to make it more similar to everything else that's out there. And that's by design, right? So when we build Lyric Studio, it's the opposite. It's on purpose. Like you write your lyrics and then it comes up with the most divergent, most interesting places you can go that maybe you didn't think about, right? So it's intentionally a different way of building the AI system from the ground up that opens up our eyes. It takes us to new places on purpose. Whereas most commercial systems, because that's what they can imagine. That's how they decide that they want to go from a commercial standpoint. Is kind of the other way. It's kind of narrowing. It's kind of like leveraging what's most popular and most common.
And so I was speaking to another guest, and I've heard a few people talk about how AI, the intelligence, seems to double every 5 to 8 months. I don't know if that's as accurate as it should be, but anyway, like, let's just say
Sure, why not?
12 months, right? Whatever that number is. So if that's the sort of rate of intelligence, then say in 3 years, it's going to be crazy, right? Like even in 3 years from now, if it kept doubling every year, that would be crazy. And at the moment, a lot of people say humans won't get replaced. You know what? It's a tool and it's going to help us and we're going to use it. It's a co-pilot for us, right? We're the pilot. It's the co-pilot. We still drive and we take it into a direction. But what happens when the music stuff, let's just take that as an example, it gets so good that my contribution is so minuscule that I might not even be needed in the room. I'm just actually wasting air being in the room. Is that a valid fear, or do you think it will never get to that point and that there will always be a role for the human?
I have kind of my own perspective at this whole issue. I was listening to a long interview of Jeffrey Hinton yesterday. I have so much respect for this man, but he kind of really believes that AI is going to be smarter and we sort of need to prepare for that. Humans have not reached their potential. We haven't. A couple of 100 years ago, literacy was considered a gift not accessible to many, right? And then we learned it's just education. Everybody can be literate. So obvious. We're not at the pinnacle of human capabilities today. We're nowhere near. How do I know? Put a person on psychedelics and they will generate images in their brain way faster than Midjourney. They're going to generate videos in their brain way faster and better than any video generator. I'm not telling people to go do psychedelics. I'm just saying that we know for fact that the human brain is capable of a lot more than AI systems today in many ways, especially when to the extent that creativity is concerned. And so it's a little bit of a delusion to say that AI is getting so much smarter than us when we ourselves are not only haven't reached our potential, we're also investing in AI intelligence way more than in human intelligence. So yes, we can build a world, which we're for some reason choosing to do, where AI replaces a whole bunch of us. And it's going to happen. And it's going to hurt. And it's completely unnecessary. Right? So I'm very, very unhappy with a lot of stuff that's happening, with the fact that people are giving up on their own intellect, with the fact that we believe that AI is smarter than us, even when it's not. It's not smarter than us today. And yet a lot of people already hang up their hats, with the fact that a lot of investors and entrepreneurs are choosing to build replacive products, and companies are eager to let go of employees to save a buck without even thinking about the fact that if there's nobody to buy their services and products, the whole system collapses, right? The fundamental principle of our economy is that if you start a business, you are creating jobs. So no matter what you do, it's fine, which is ridiculous. But if what you're doing is reducing job with your business, then how is this fine, right? But I really think it's mindset and intention. If we instead build machines that are designed to elevate, that are designed to combine human and machine intellect, if we believe in human abilities enough to bother trying combining AI with humanity, the results are so much better, right? I think we're going to see both in reality. When it comes to predicting, I think we're going to see the replacement, we're going to feel the pain, we're going to make this dystopian nightmare come true because we believe in it. But at the same time, we're also going to have systems that elevate people. And some people are going to come out on top because they're going to have the audacity to believe that they're smarter than AI and use AI to their benefit.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a perspective I've not heard before. I've never heard anybody look at that side of human intellect. You're right. I do hear a lot of people give up and just say that's it. And that whole cycle, right? Like you say, if I, as a company, are now going to reduce jobs, but I'm building a product and there's now fewer people in the world that can afford to buy my product, then that just doesn't make sense. So you almost have an obligation and a duty to make sure you do your fair share. And if all the companies do their fair share and make sure we reward people, then the whole process works, the whole system works, doesn't it? That's some basics of finance, I guess.
What is their plan, right? We're just so used to this idea that if everybody optimizes what's selfishly best for them, then everything magically works out. Well, not under all circumstances, not under this one.
Hmm. Okay, here's another big question. If I was advising my kids, because my daughter's just left high school and she's been really seriously thinking about her future, and she wanted to be an artist. I think she's been put off a little bit by the whole AI thing. And now she's really struggling. So, if you had to give advice to a young person in today's world, what would you say? What are some of the things that they should focus on? What are some of the big bets that you think will definitely, those are the safest things to get into? Now, I know you talked about, I forgot the guy's name, the godfather of AI.
Jeffrey Hinton.
Yes, because he was asked this question and on a
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah, he said being a plumber.
I diverge from Hinton in many. I respect him so much. He's one of the people I respect most in my field. But I disagree with him fairly consistently, which is great. Okay, I think the main thing, is to trust our children in forging their own path, because fundamentally we don't know. We don't know. So this is not a time to tell your child what to do and insist that they go in a certain direction, but to admit that our children are going to be living in a different age than us, and we're not all that well equipped to decide what they should be doing. And that's what I did with my child. I told him, you do whatever you want and I pay for it. So that's what we did, and he actually just started college as well. That being said, I do have some thoughts, right? So I think that's the most important, right? Give them the freedom, because our children are made for the future, and they have an ability to trust that they have a feel for it that we might simply not, right? So that's number one. More specifically, I think we're going to have a huge wave of robotics, right? Because right now the biggest limitation of AI agents, if you will, almost everything is an agent these days, is that it's kind of out there in the ether, right? So it can only access things that are also in the ether with it. But what if it could walk around and go places and see things and interact with us here? That would give it a lot more power, and industry realizes that. So things are going to go there. So if somebody is going to college right now, and they're interested in it, that could be a fairly safe path for a while, for a moment. Another thing that's really, really key, and that's advice that's circulating around, which I think has a lot of wisdom, is to study fundamentals. So I spent 10 years in school, right, in post-secondary education, and I have several degrees in math in addition to computer science. And all of us know that for the most part, what you learn in math is not directly applicable. But I have this direct experience of having become a smarter human being as a result of learning these kind of fundamentals and going deep into them, and really kind of sweating hard to solve very, very, very difficult math problems over years, made me into a significantly smarter human being. And it's the same thing if you study physics, for example, any of the really fundamental sciences. So that's a fairly safe bet, because a person who has studied math or physics, or anything kind of hardcore serious like that, they'll figure out whatever they need to figure out as the world changes.
So it's almost because those subjects are difficult and they take a certain type of thinking, it conditions you to be able to deal with those sort of problems. Is that the thinking there?
Well, okay, we're investing in these neural networks and making them bigger and smarter. Invest in this. Invest in what's inside your own skull. What we have, our brains are magnificent. We need to stop being intimidated by the machine. We don't the reason these machines are smart is because they're modeled after us. And we know for a fact that we're modeling a small percent. We're modeling only certain very specific capabilities of our brain. There is so much more magic in our minds. So train your human brain, train it. Give it hard stuff that you're interested in, if that's the direction you want to go. And trust yourself. Trust yourself. Believe in yourself. It's never been more important. And believe in your children. believe in them. If they show a little bit of interest in something that you think is risky, like let that grow. They know. They know.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you so much for that, Maya. I really appreciate that. I will make sure my daughter listens to this episode. She's a very creative person, actually. She's so good at art. I was looking at some of her schoolwork and it's like a photograph, but she'd
Wow.
sketched it. It's so good. So I
Amazing.
do hope she finds her way eventually. So that's always every parent's wish, isn't it? That the kids find their calling and I mean, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but
I
I'm
know,
working on it.
right?
Yeah, it's like hard.
I know. Every like 6 to 7 years, I'm like, all right, what am I gonna do when I grow up? And then I pivot. It's hard.
Can I talk about pivoting for a moment? Because I think that's a really interesting topic and it's kind of related because we're talking about careers. I mean, I know people that have done the same job for maybe 20 or 30 years and
Respect.
respect.
No, I mean it.
Yeah, no, 100%. But we're living in a world now where any moment in time, we may have to switch direction because, like we say, certain things may be taken over by AI or at least be done so differently that you no longer enjoy doing that anymore. So you need to constantly be able to adapt, be agile, as I would say. So, what advice do you have for those people? Because you've pivoted. Like, what a pivot you made! That was incredible. Like from music and creative stuff, and you've gone like pure tech.
Yeah, so when I was 7 years old, my parents moved out of Belarus to Israel, and when I was 12, they moved from Israel to Canada. So my brain has been through the ringer as a child. We're talking about different languages with different alphabets, cultures that are incredibly incredibly different. Like the simplest things don't translate. How you ask a question, even if you translate the language, doesn't translate. The facial expressions don't translate. It's insane. So I've had to sort of restart from scratch as a child twice in a row. Um, and I think that just sort of taught me that you can't rely on what you have, right? You might have to reinvent yourself. And so about every 5 to 7 years, 6 to 7 years, I end up making very, very big changes in my life. Um, it's always difficult. It's always difficult. Like it doesn't. I mean, writing the book was such a big mountain to climb. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. If you haven't done that specific thing, you're gonna have to learn how to do it. Um, but I think it keeps life interesting. Adult brains are capable of change, are capable of learning. There's actually a lot of power in the adult brain for learning something new in a way that our society doesn't acknowledge enough. Um, and so I think right now it's inevitable. I feel it around me. I feel people realizing that they're going to have to figure out something else. And the braver ones are thinking what it is, and are starting to forge new paths. I'm making a lot of changes in my own life. A, a lot of people around me have switched jobs, have entered entrepreneurship, have left entrepreneurships, have done other significant shifts in the way that they live. It's going to be a new world, and we can't. We there's no point in lying to ourselves and knowing exactly where it's going. But I would say listen to your kind of inner wisdom. And if you feel that you need to shift and relocate, don't wait for a strong external signal. Um, make the change now. Now's the time.
And another question. So you're in education. Learning is kind of like your superpower, right? You've got to be constantly learning.
I
Ah,
never thought about it like that. I never thought about that. Okay.
and the type of learning that you do, it's not like it's a subject that, isn't going to change much. Like, I don't know, if I was a history professor, I'd be like, I've got these 5 stories, I've studied them to death, and I'm going to keep repeating those in every lesson. Not that history professors do that, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
that stuff is history, that's there, that's kind of already written. the stuff you're talking about is writing itself constantly. Like the world of AI keeps changing. So how do you stay current? How do you learn? What advice might you have for someone who is struggling to learn? Any tips on that?
I'm going to say something really weird right now, but it's my truth. I don't feel that it's changing all that much. I don't feel it at all. A lot of the stuff that industry is glacial to recognize, I've known since 2015. They're very, 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 very slowly recognizing really basic things. The idea that you need to make your super smart brain interact with people is obvious. It's obvious, right? And the only industry, sub industry of AI that recognize it are LLMs because they're all copying ChatGPT. These people have no imagination. It's unbelievable. Sorry, they actually do have an imagination. It's like people are not letting them use their imagination. It doesn't make any sense. How are text to image models not more deeply interactive by now when that's what everybody's asking for? Why are large music models so slow to become interactive when it's such an obvious thing to do, right? So to me, it looks kind of glacial in a way. And the marks that a lot of people use, like can it pass a medical exam? Can it pass the SATs? That's cool. And I respect that. And it's super cool that AI is able to pass all these various tests. Like honestly, it is. But like it's such a narrow lens. It's such a narrow lens. How do we not have LLMs that are designed for creativity still? It's not that hard to do in some sense, compared to the kind of resources and the kind of minds that are being applied to it. We did it in 2020 for lyrics. We need a system that's wildly creative. They can do it. You give me access to OpenAI, I can make ChatGPT way more creative. They're not doing it because they're so focused on replacing search engines, doing old things with new tech. So to me, I feel like I'm watching a snail.
Because you mentioned that earlier in the episode about how they're trying to replace search engines. Could we go back to that? What's that all about? What's happening there?
If people knew how I honestly feel about this stuff, I couldn't believe it. And this is like very beginning of 2023. They were already talking about replacing search engines. Google had a heart attack when Code Red, when ChatGPT was released. To be fair, they had their own version of it already pretty far along in the background. But they sort of, for safety reasons, they decided not to release it. So it's like the whole industry is like, okay, we have a chatbot, we have this generative model, we're going to use it for search. It's ridiculous. It's a creative, imaginative model. It's going to hallucinate. It's still hallucinating. They've poured in billions of dollars to make it stop hallucinating, and it still hallucinates. Also, like, really? You build a thinking machine, and the best thing you can apply it for is to be a lookup table that talks to you in natural language? The lack of imagination is staggering. Like, what we're seeing in the world today, the way that Gen AI is being applied, only makes sense in light of the fact that we've destroyed our forest, that we've gotten rid of species one after the other, that we're torturing animals in the name of eating them in a way that's far excessive to our, food consumption needs. We're taking this magnificent thing and we're applying it in some of the most boring, destructive ways possible. Luckily, not exclusively, but to a very large degree.
I did think about that when you were talking about how boring it is. I was just picturing the user interface for all of these LLMs. It's terrible, isn't it? It's just like a little text box, and you've got the screen where you see the response, but it's not very engaging. You think it'd be cool, right? Like a really cool interface, especially how much they've invested into it. It is pretty boring in that respect as well.
That's right. There's not nearly enough. So when we're looking at academia, we had other ways of interacting with systems. There's a system called Improviser. And I cannot believe that there's no commercial product like this yet. If somebody wants to do it, let me know. I could help a team do that. Basically, you could play on the piano and it would respond to you. So you could kind of trade with it. So the first time that I improvised was with Robert Keller's system called Improviser. It literally taught me how to improvise by improvising with me. Not text to music. Music and music, right? We're both making music together with a machine. The limited imagination today, everything is text to something, okay? It's nice. It's nice. Text to something is lovely. It's powerful. It's not the only thing out there. So when we're talking about interfaces, we barely scratch the surface of what's possible. So yes, let's stop thinking about Gen AI as this closed thing, and let's stop focusing all of our energy into making the LLM marginally smarter and focus on how to have it interact with us. So much low-hanging fruit there.
Got it. Well, we're end of time, and I can't believe how quickly time has gone, which always is a great sign. It's an amazing topic, amazing insights. But before we go, I'm going to ask you one of my favorite questions, which I didn't tell you about, but it's usually the way I end every show. I think you might have answered this one, to be honest, but let's just see. So, if you could have any superpower to abolish something in the world of work, like remove it, what would that be? What's the thing that really gets you frustrated in the world of work?
I think we need to do something about greed in our world. And there are no simple solutions. Flipping to the other political extreme would be equally or more disastrous, right? But we need some finesse. We need people in power to learn how to balance their personal desires with the needs, with the basic needs of other people. So in the end, and I talk about it in my book, it's about humanity. The problems we're seeing with AI are human problems. It's how we choose to wield this really powerful thing. And I hope that that we can come together and realize that the best solutions with AI are those that profoundly elevate humanity, deeply and profoundly, and not just make a small number of people super, super rich.
Fantastic. Well, Maya, thank you so much. And before we go, name of the book and where can we get it from?
Creative Machines, AI, Art, and Us, available on Amazon and many other places. This was so fun, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh no, it's been honestly, it's just been full of energy, and I love your passion as well. So I really want to thank you for sharing that. There was no filter; it was just raw, which I love. Yeah,
What's a
amazing.
filter? I'm kidding.
Apparently, these young trendy people talk about filters these days, but I have no idea. I never use one. Anyway, not much anyway. But no, thank you once again, Maya, and we'll include the relevant links in the show notes as well, so people can go and check out the book. And please check it out. The cover is super creative. I love it. It's just a work of art. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www. It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again. www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.